Welcome to Meet the Candidate 2021. My guest for this session is Rod Higgins, candidate for Spokane Valley City Council. Welcome, Rod.
Hi, Lani. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm glad you could make it in today. I understand you have an all-day meeting tomorrow, so I'm glad this worked in your schedule.
As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about city finances. It's always exhilarating.
It's an exciting topic, so we're going to talk about things that are more interesting, like tell me about where you grew up.
I grew up in 2 Mile Creek. You've never heard of it?
I've never heard of 2 Mile Creek.
Well, as you're passing through Wallace after you've left Kellogg, and you're headed for Wallace, and there's a little town of Osborne there.
Yeah?
Actually, it's bigger than Wallace anymore, so it's not that little. If you turned at the Osborne exit, if you go right, you go into Osborne. If you go left, you go up 2 Mile Creek.
Okay. I'm sure it was named for being 2 miles from somewhere.
Well, it's 2 miles long.
Oh, 2 miles.
What's the point of origin? I don't know.
Okay. And somebody measured it. So you did you go to school in that region, that area?
I went to grade school in Osborne, and graduated in Wallace High School. So simplicity being paramount here. When somebody says, "Where are you from?" I say Wallace. It's a lot simpler.
It is a lot simpler. So what did you do for training or education past high school?
University of Idaho. Back then, there wasn't such a thing as majoring in ROTC, but in effect, that's what I did. I intended to make a career of the Army, and after I got in the Army, it was at the leading edge of Vietnam. Okay, so my graduating class from Infantry Officers Basic at Fort Benning, they still didn't want young second lieutenants directly into combat, so half of the class went to Germany, half of the class went to Korea, and I went to Korea. So I learned about Asia.
Well, that's one of the questions I ask people often is where have they traveled and what have they learned from that? What are some things that you learned from that time in Korea?
Well, I learned that that was a terrible place to have to fight a war, let me tell you. I've never been so cold as I was there. And coming from North Idaho, that's saying something. Yeah. The hills, from a combat point of view, they were just impossible to attack, defend, whatever. Defending probably better than. Anyway, that's nothing to do with nothing.
Well, did you end up making a career of the Army, or
I did not.
you moved on to?
I extended for I had a 2-year term back then rather than 4 as they do now. But at the end of 2, I still hadn't made up my mind, and so I extended for another 3 months. And at the end of 1966, I thought, no, time to get out.
Okay. So then what brought you to the Spokane Valley?
A series of trips back and forth, a lot of different places. When I got out of the Army, I went back to Wallace for a time. Then I came to Spokane, worked for Merrill Lynch, and then went to Seattle and worked for Safeco. Then I worked for Pacific National Bank out of Tacoma, came back to Spokane, excuse me, and then ended up in Sequim, Washington, farming. We had a seed farm over there. Beautiful place. Great way to live. Kind of a dicey way to make a living, farming.
It is, and it's quite a change after being involved in the banking and finance side of things. But
Yes, indeed.
So what caused you to leave Sequim?
The third consecutive crop failure. Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens, when it blew, didn't necessarily throw a lot of ash on us. As a matter of fact, it had very little to do, but it did alter the weather pattern. And we had a lot of hybrid cabbage that required bees to pollinate them. And it got cold, and the bees wouldn't come out of their hives. The beekeeper actually had to feed them sugar to keep them alive. And we didn't realize quite what had happened to us until we started to harvest, and we had contractual needs, like for germination, moisture, and stuff like that. And the seeds just weren't there. Okay, so
I didn't know that you had been a farmer, Rod. That's something new that I learned about you this time. So it still didn't get you back to Spokane Valley.
no, it didn't. Well, there are a few other stops in between there. After that, I came back from Squim to work for Sunshine Mining Company back in the old hometown digs. And they eventually moved their headquarters to Boise, and I went with them. And in Boise, my boss was killed.
Oh,
And there was, you might remember, Wyatt Howard was his name. He ran into a tree. He was the head of the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, and he had a traffic accident anyway and died. And there was a general shakeup in the hierarchy, and and a general movement south in the price of precious metals. So I then next went to Nevada, where I was with the Nevada Mining Association, eventually being their executive director. At a very exciting time. There was a gold rush that nobody really knew about, but at a time that we were producing more gold than most any other gold rush around at the time. That, if you are familiar with association work, you're on limited time after a time. So when that gig ended, I came back north and worked for Coeur d'Alene Mines Corporation, and then from there, I did some other things in personnel work and stuff like that. Spent a little time with the U.S. Postal Service. Okay, I was a dock supervisor out there. I did not care for what they called Tour 1, which is the graveyard shift. And that messes with your psyche, believe me.
it is. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then I kind of got back into mining again, working for the International Association of Mine Safety Professionals. And that had to do with, as the name implies, mine safety. And from there, I sort of retired. But at that time, I was living here in Spokane Valley. And in fact, I've been here for about 30 years.
Okay, so you've been back to Spokane Valley, probably when you were working in Coeur d'Alene, is that?
Yes.
So came back here, working, retired, and still here. And so what inspired you to run for public office?
Well, part of the job with the Nevada Mining Association was being their chief lobbyist. That's a nasty word, but it really doesn't need to be. You're an imparter of information if you're doing your job right. And so it all started with Sunshine Mining Company, by the way. You remember, or maybe you don't, the Bunker Hill Company was the voice of mining in North Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And one day they went down. They ceased to operate. And my boss at the time said, we were listening to the radio in his office, and he said, they've been the voice of North Idaho, mining voice, for a long time. And now we don't have a voice. I want you to go to Boise and be that. So I did. And I got my toes in the water in the lobbying business. Government affairs, to put it nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that got you interested in perhaps being inside government.
Yes. In the functioning, how it operated, the good, the bad. So back to your question about Spokane Valley, I was minding my own business one day, driving up the road, kind of like now, a bunch of signs on the road, and I didn't recognize any of the names, and so I called a friend who was on city council at the time and said, who are you supporting? I thought, that's a good place to start. So what she said was, well, this person, that person, but we're looking for somebody to run in this slot, and right now there's nobody. or there is somebody, but we don't want them to run unopposed. Would you be interested? And I thought, well, let me talk to my wife. That's always a good dodge, right? Well, surprise, surprise, my wife said, I think that's a wonderful idea. Whoa. So off I went. Well, although there was, at that point then, 2 people in the race, by filing deadline that day, there were 4 people in the race, and I came in dead last, okay? But surprise, surprise, I didn't have much money, didn't really do much campaigning, but I did get 3,500 votes, which I thought was really surprising. Well, as luck would have it, the lady that recruited me moved out of the city, and so she had to relinquish her seat. And this one made the daily newspaper. What's the name of it? Anyway, I applied for the job to fill the vacancy, and it came down to a tie vote, 3-3 on city council. Okay, so when there's a tie vote on city council, you have 2 ways to go. You can flip a coin, or you can have the county commissioners choose the new city council person. And the city council wasn't about to let that happen, so they flipped a coin, and I won.
Okay, well, this election, I don't think you have the option of a coin flip. But you do have to
No.
come up for an answer to the question, why should people vote for Rod Higgins for Spokane Valley City Council?
Well, in my time on council, which is coming up in 10 years, maybe longer, I think I've been a calm voice. I don't think. I've been a calm voice, a sensible voice, and kept us on a track for fiscal responsibility and not getting off in the weeds on things that are not city business that we have no influence over, but can get all tangled up in. Okay. And so I believe I've done a good job, and I would appreciate your vote.
All right, well, thank you for coming in today, Rod, and good luck with your campaign and your meeting tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
What does it mean to be awake? It means to truly understand the issues facing us and actively participate as a citizen in this country. One way you can do that is by voting your values, based on the Word of God. We Believe We Vote has done the research and provides you the information you need to make an informed decision on which candidates will champion our values and work for us. Now is the time to rise up, get involved, and vote. WeBelieveWeVote.com.
Hello, Spokane. This is Governor Mike Huckabee. I'm going to be speaking at We Believe We Vote's October 2nd fundraiser. It's more important than ever for Christians to come together and to vote. I'm looking forward to seeing you on October the 2nd of this year. For tickets to the event, go to WeBelieveWeVote.com.